Hey, what's up, X Factor? I am Erika, and this is Stephen. Welcome back to the PHNX Mercury podcast. I have been doing a little bit of disservice to our production squad, and so I just want to make sure I give Jacob Franklin here an extra special shout out today because as I was listening back to some of my, past introductions, I have not introduced them. So I just want to make sure I give Jacob Franklin the proper flowers, for coming on here at 6 o'clock at night and producing our show. So huge shout out to Jacob. Stephen, how the heck are we?
We are extremely thoroughly entertained, aren't we?
That was almost the headline for this show is, are you not entertained?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got blessed with a lot of content to talk about. This team is doing their thing. Obviously, they had a little bit of a letdown against the Las Vegas Aces, excuse me, but generally speaking, that was a very highly entertaining basketball game. And naturally, Sunday lended itself to being even more entertaining in a positive way for the team. So, looking forward to talking about everything. How you feeling today on this Monday?
I have to be honest, I'm having a great day. I had Chick-fil-A for lunch. I can't really complain. I have gotten to go over the weekend we had, relive through some pictures we took. We had a great time at the takeover on Thursday. And for those of you that weren't there, not only did you miss out, but you have another opportunity to come in August. So I just want to remind everybody about that. But before we move any further, I do also want to remind you guys to make sure to subscribe to PHNX and wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, give us a thumbs up or a 5-star review right now immediately. We've got Kobe, McFubin, Andy, and Daniel in the chat. All of them except Kobe were at the takeover, and I like to think that they all had a great time. What about you, Stephen? Did you have fun?
I think it's needless to say, yes, I was thoroughly entertained by everybody that came through. We appreciate y'all again for tapping in with us at the takeover. We're looking forward to the next opportunity to watch the team with you all. We'll have a little bit more clarity as far as where they are and what the stakes may be in August, but definitely looking forward to that next one stemming from this first one that we had from this past Thursday. So definitely looking forward to it. Again, we appreciate you all genuinely, thoroughly. I know we said it a lot, but we want to make sure we reiterate that and emphasize that because we truly can't be ourselves without you all. And we appreciate being able to engage, entertain, and inform you all over this platform that we're establishing here with PHNX.
And listen, Stephen, before we actually move into this, I have some unfortunate news for you. And I think you're just going to be a little disappointed in me because we've talked about Nipsey, is that correct, on this show
Correct.
before?
Yes, we
Have you heard what I did on the Wildcat show today?
Uh-oh. Talk to me.
I called him Nippy, and I've been waiting all day to tell you this information. It was an accident.
I'm disappointed. I'm not even gonna hold you. I'm thoroughly disappointed in you. We had a whole elaborate conversation about it, and we talked about it with I forget who it was that asked the question that eventually sprung the conversation between us about the legendary rest in peace Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey, gotta get it together, tighten up.
It was very popular conversation today on the Wildcat show. So I thought you might get a little bit of a kick out of that. It was a good laugh we had over there today.
Make sure they send me that clip so I can get on you about that. I'm looking forward to it.
I want you to know that the person who initially asked us about Nipsey is in the comment, and he commented Nippy Hustle. And that's what jogged my memory in order to tell you this information this afternoon.
That's crazy. Shout out Michael. We appreciate you, Michael, for that conversation. School her, please. I'm doing my job on my end. Clearly, I need more help.
He raps at me every time I come on his Wildcat show. I can't get away from it. He's rapping at me, not with me, at me.
Hopefully it resonates with you after this conversation we're having in real time and live right now. I'm going to be testing you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, you'll come back at the Olympic break and we'll have to play a game about Nipsey, huh?
Yes, absolutely. That sounds like fun.
But we haven't talked to you guys in a week, and it's been quite a week. And before we move any further, we kind of spoke on this quite a bit last week, but I just want to reiterate that the things are official now and in pen instead of paper. And pen instead of pencil now. And so it is official. Kahleah Copper has made her very first Olympic squad, and she will be making her Olympic team debut. this summer, which is super exciting. And obviously, Diana Taurasi and Brittney Griner will also be there and be on the squad. But with things being official, I wanted to reiterate how blessed and lucky that Kahleah feels in order to be on this team and for this selection to be made. She worked really hard for this, and it was a dream of hers since she was really young, and it's really awesome to watch this come to fruition.
Excuse me. It is. I can't think of a more deserving athlete for just looking at her career trajectory, being drafted the way that she was drafted, having all the eyes stacked against her, having to get everything that she's earned, and I want to emphasize earned, out the literal mud in a professional sense. Everything's been earned, nothing's been given to her, and she's hasn't lost. There comes a time where you are in just utter desire of and an utter pursuit of a specific goal or a specific space or standard, and then you meet that space or standard, and then you just kind of get comfortable. I think a lot of people that have gotten successful in any context of life kind of have had moments like this come up. And it's kind of there's a point where you have to decide, okay, am I comfortable where I'm at, or am I going to continue to push this thing as far as I possibly can now that I've gotten to where I desire to get to? Needless to say, Kahleah has gotten to that space that she's desired, and she's still kicking down doors. She still has that energy that's made her, and she just continues to impress. You can look at her averaging more than 5 points past her previous career high set last season in points per game. Her ascending from being an ancillary player to being a player that plays off of advantages created by someone else to now being a main fire starter for the Phoenix Mercury. She's the player that's getting plays called for her at the end of the games. Something we're going to get into later, but she's the best player in the clutch in the WNBA this season so far, a little bit past the first quarter mark of the regular season. Again, to a team that she's brand new to. I think that says a whole lot about her. It says a whole lot about the perception from her teammates and from her coaching staff that she's earned. And I think, needless to say, the Team USA earning of opportunity is going to provide another opportunity for her to just do what she does, which is win.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to watch this shape out this summer in the Olympics. It's going to be back-to-back exciting weeks for the Mercury with the All-Star game, which, by the way, I have done a crappy job of reminding you guys of every single day. Listen, All-Star voting started on Thursday, and we have a civic duty to get this squad full of Mercury members. So, we've already got 3 squad members that are set to be there with Team USA and Diana Taurasi, Brittney Griner, and Kahleah Copper, but I expect a pretty large push for Beck Allen, Sophie Cunningham, and Natasha Cloud to be making an all-star team this summer.
Yeah, I want to make sure, like we did last week, it was me that mentioned Beck Allen. She will be on the Australian team, so she won't be available. So only other team that has four Olympians, the Las Vegas Aces. So the Mercury and the Aces, 4 Olympians. Obviously, Beck Allen is going to be with her national team, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Natasha Cloud should 100% be on the All-Star team if she wants to. It should be her choice, but she should certainly be voted in for sure. And then, Sophie Cunningham still has a little bit more to prove in that respect, but she has an opportunity with the way that things have been opened up to potentially kind of etch her way into that space. Time will tell with that, but she's in that space where she might have an opportunity to kind of make it on the back end. So, yeah, X Factor, do your thing. Loud and rambunctious in person. Make sure you handle your business on them polls and the voting tip as well. Let's get to it.
I want to make sure I point out just how impressed that Stephen was with the way that the Phoenix Mercury promotes themselves within the city of Phoenix. I'll let Stephen kind of speak on that a little bit. This is his first time in Phoenix, and it was an honor to show him around a little bit.
It was definitely an impressive showing, just seeing the many different banners for each individual player spaced around the Footprint Center. Obviously, the banners advertising the All-Star weekend to come in about a little over a month from today. And just generally looking at the energy around the team. Saw a whole lot of different things advertising the team around the city. Like those little things always stand out to me, and it makes it feel like the city is embracing and investing in the franchise that is the Phoenix Mercury, not unlike the franchise is doing with the city itself. So just seeing that kind of relationship in advertising and just always seeing the team being pubbed in some capacity, I think is important. And it's just fun. It's just fun to observe those things, and I see why the players are so happy because they're literally being invested in monetarily, but they can also see it in other contexts, whether it's be the way they're being fed thoroughly at practice, having nutritionists and chefs on site, and then obviously even more so looking at things around the city. So definitely makes for a different type of culture. I appreciate being able to observe and see that.
Yeah, it was definitely a good time. And then there was also some kind of big roster moves this week. Last time we talked to you guys, the Mercury had just waived Morgan Birch, and I think we all are kind of scratching our heads just a little bit, wondering exactly what the Mercury's plans were moving forward away from Morgan Birch. But then within 48 hours, they had re-signed Charisma Osborne, who they had taken in the draft as well. She obviously didn't play over the weekend, but I think that will change moving forward. She is a rookie. It's first year. She's going to be a bench player at best. And I think all of the key role players on the Mercury are what we saw this weekend. I think that the Mercury is kind of starting to find its rotation a little bit better. And so the bench numbers are with that moving down. And obviously with Beck Allen and BG back, obviously we kind of anticipated the bench minutes to move down a little bit, but we've definitely seen that come to fruition over the weekend.
Yeah, we did. I'm curious to see, if at all, what role Charisma is able to carve out in the rotation. I've enjoyed the minutes where Suge Sutton has been either on the floor with Natasha Cloud or operating as the sole floor general without Natasha on the floor. Suge has had a handful of fun flashes this season, especially in pick and roll with Natasha Mack and some of the pick and roll decisions that she's been making. Also balancing that out and finding her own shot as well. So I'm curious what the role for Charisma will be, like kind of what the pitch was from the team to her, and ultimately making that deal happen. But I just, at this moment in time, I don't see where she'll be able to kind of make anything shake, just because everybody's been handling their business and then some in the rotation, particularly at that guard spot.
Yeah, and I actually saw a question a little bit earlier from Sean. Any thoughts on Sophie's performance so far and her role off the bench? She might get a bit disgruntled in the long run, but winning cures all. And I would absolutely agree with the last piece of the sentiment there. Winning does cure all. And I think you're seeing that in real time. I think we all kind of had some nerves about the personalities on this team coming into the season. But as we've seen, when it rains, it pours, and when it doesn't, it doesn't. And this team is really happy, and you can see it written all over their faces as they play in the pre-games, post-games. It doesn't matter. They seem extremely, extremely happy.
Yep. Just for a little bit of context, Sophie's averaging 26 minutes a game this season so far. She's averaging 7.9 points. She's got 1.9 assists a game, and she's grabbing almost 4.5 rebounds a game. So just kind of looking at her performance, it's gonna take a little bit of time to have her, especially with. So she came into the season like we talked about on our first episode, and I mentioned she would be more than likely the sixth player on this team. She is in that role. Rebecca Allen has a concussion, misses multiple games. Now she's thrusted back into the starting role after trying to get used to and get acclimated with playing that reserve role for the team. So we've seen her kind of bounce back and forth a couple of times now already this season. I think now that they're healthy, we're going to start to see her find her footing in terms of her rhythm and her comfortability with this team in that specific role, be able to better pick her spots, be able to figure out how to be most effective and optimize herself within that role. Needless to say, she's bought into it. You haven't seen or felt any type of complaining from her. It's just a matter of getting used to that particular role with this particular team in context with everything that Nate Tibbetts is desiring for her from that role. So just give her a little bit of time, just like with everybody else, excluding Kahleah Copper, because she's just been killing everything. And just allow for kind of the puzzle pieces to kind of fit in the way that they need to.
Yes. All right. So I think we've kind of run down the basics, housekeeping. Actually, before I move on, one more piece of housekeeping. No show on Thursday. We'll see you guys on Wednesday this week. So we're gonna have a lot of fun 2 days this week, and it's gonna be super exciting. That being said, though, the Mercury took on the Aces last week, and we all went together. We had a lot of fun. That being said, the Mercury also did take an L. They lost to the Aces 103-99. It was a tight game. I would say from halftime on, it was extremely tight, neck and neck. But before we get into anything about this game, I would like to ask Stephen, do you think you're bad luck?
No, absolutely not. No, I think Jackie Young is a sensational basketball player, and that had every bit to do with what the result was. That had nothing to do with me. So to answer your question, absolutely not.
You know what? That's fair. Jackie is a menace.
Yes.
uh, the Mercury started the game out super uber strong. I mean, let me open this bad boy up before I lie. Yeah, on a 28-12 lead in the first quarter, and then gave up 42 points in that second quarter to make it a much tighter game in the second half. That being said, coming out in the third quarter, I do want to give a special shout out to the people wearing black and white, aka the referees, in making it all about them, because there were 42 total fouls in this game, and it was a rough watch. Stephen knows that I'm a little bit of a more emotional basketball watcher than he is. He uses his thinking cap a little more than I do. I'll admit. But that being said, at one point during the game, I looked at Stephen and I'm like, dude, what the heck? And he's like, no, you're right this time. And I'm like, I love being told that, but I wish it wasn't this way.
Yeah, it was not the prettiest game in terms of officiating. That third quarter was a dread, but the fourth quarter took it to even further extent. It was funny. I was talking to Saul about appreciating how quick WNBA games are, because NBA games can kind of feel drawn out with the way that officiating goes, the reviews, the fouls, all of that stuff. And like a quarter after we had that conversation at halftime. By the time we got through the fourth quarter was like 45 minutes in and of itself. And he was like, yeah, remember that conversation we had about the W games being a breeze in a sense? He's like, yeah, not this one. How many times did we see Becky Hammond and Nate Tibbetts either actually challenge or truly consider challenging between that third and fourth quarter stretch? It was ridiculous.
Well, and the other thing that I wanted to point out when I was there actually is you kept seeing Becky and Nate look at each other like, "Are you seeing the same thing I am?" And I think that we've talked a lot about accountability between you and I, but I think seriously there has got to be a public grading system in place. I think if anything else, to give viewers some insight into why what's being called is being called, so that way you and I can make educated and analysis and report on that, because at this point I feel like a blind person in regards to the officiating, which I feel is unfair.
Yeah, and that like I feel like the officiating generally has been at a certain level this season in the W. But even from that level, that game in particular was a little bit worse. And this is probably the most you'll ever hear me speak on officiating, because I feel like it's on the players to adjust. However, when it's this drastic, when it's this time consuming in terms of the amount of fouls, the reviews, and all of that stuff, it takes away the rhythm of a game that was a very contentious, very competitive game between two heavyweights in the Western Conference and in the general WNBA. So I just think they got to clean that up. I think it did impact the game in a few different windows, just kind of breaking the rhythm, and then both teams having to regenerate the space that they were operating in before the stoppage and play. But it just kind of is what it is on that end. I expect the referees to be better as the season goes on and the games grow more meaningful. But kind of until then, we're just gonna kind of be in this little bit of impasse situation with the officiating and the level that they're at right now.
Absolutely. Amanda in the comments said, "It's the refs that are blind, not you, Erica." Thanks for that, Amanda. Appreciate you taking up for me and making sure my eyesight's not bad. But all things considered, it was not a bad showing for the Phoenix Mercury. 3 of 5 starters over 15 points. You've got Kahleah Copper. It was as close to a struggle game as I guess you could call it for her, with only 18 points. That being said, it's not like she did nothing else for the team, with 5 assists, 4 rebounds, 2 steals. Like, she was out there hustling. That being said, it was an extremely good showing for Brittney Griner. I think the word that can be used here is dominant. There is no other BG, and it was very blatantly obvious in this game. Now, listen, I'm an A'ja Wilson believer, okay? You will never convince me that A'ja is not actively right now the best player in the WNBA. That being said, the skill set of Brittney Griner is completely different to that of A'ja Wilson, and they're almost two incomparable centers, and it is extremely, extremely fun to watch when these two teams go at it.
It is. It really is. And it just kind of speaks to the level of skill that is spanning across the entire W right now. Like, you could talk about 7 different players having some percentage of a stake of claim in that best player in the W conversation right now. And again, that just speaks to the parity, speaks to the level of skill that the league is at right now and where things are trending, because there's going to be a handful more players that thrust their name and ink their name in that conversation by the end of the regular season. And just kind of looking at this game through that lens, I think the thing that kind of stood out most to me, outside of the barrage of 3-point attempts that the Las Vegas Aces knocked down in that second quarter, I believe it was 10 for 10, if I'm not mistaken. Just an absurd, ridiculous 42 points that they put up in that period. The big thing for me, in that particular thing was their switching, and it was a lot of that with Jackie Young. I think she knocked down 5 of those 10 makes from deep for the Aces in that second quarter. You just got to be able to better contain her. And I think they just had a little bit too much soft switching when they were passing her off from one another when actions took place. And you saw even a handful of times you could see Nate's reaction as it happened. He's like, no, we just talked about this in the last time out that I had to burn. We got to be a lot more tighter and up to touch with her when she's getting the ball, because any airspace, she was letting that thing fly. And she was barely even touching the rim on a handful of those attempts. So I think that was kind of a microcosm of something larger to look at going forward with them, with their defense, as they try to turn multiple corners with BG back. And it's them being able to switch more aggressively and not concede that little gap to where players like Jackie Young can catch and pull up with comfortability and be able to knock down threes at the rate that she was able to, generally in that game, but especially in that second quarter. And then the other big thing for me was that they set an incredible tone in that game. If we take it past the second quarter and go back to the first quarter, the Aces were held to, I believe it was 15 points, if I'm not mistaken, 12 points in that first quarter. And it wasn't because they were just like missing shots. It wasn't because they didn't really have rhythm. The Mercury were able to comply on multiple stops in a row, and they were doing a great job with the switching. Like I talked about, there was a weakness in the second quarter and even in the third quarter. The first quarter, they came out sharp. They came out ready to play. They had, I don't know how many deflections between Rebecca Allen and Kahleah Copper getting out into the lanes in denial and just being active on the ball. Natasha Cloud obviously chipping in with that as well. And they were just at a certain level to set a tone in this game. Scored a lot of points in the paint in that first quarter, and they were able to score a lot even more so off of the activity starting with their defense. And I think that's something that Nate is looking for them to step in their game-by-game process, being able to set better tones. Because when they can dictate to an opponent that early, if the Aces don't get that barrage of 3-point makes that they did in the second quarter, we might be talking about this team having gone 2-0 and beat the defending champs 2 times a little bit past the first quarter stretch of the regular season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think before we get into the Storm game a little bit, I do want to just say I think we saw it improve game to game from Thursday to Sunday. I think the defense, especially in the first half against the Storm, was exactly the improvements that you just asked for. They went home, watched film, and improved on that in order to keep the Storm put away on Sunday.
Yes, I agree. And I think that's a perfect kind of segue into that game.
Yes. Now, this game was really fun. And now listen, if you come here from the Wildcat Show, you know how I feel about smelly, rainy Seattle, okay? I don't have to tell you guys this at all, okay? It's not my favorite place. That being said, on Sunday, I hear the sky was just a little gloomier in Seattle because they took an L to their enemies, the Mercury. And it was the first game all season that the Mercury has led beginning to end, which I think is huge for this team. I think they have done in select games, done a really good job of coming out with fire. And then even in more select games, they've come out in the third quarter after halftime with more fire. But in this game, they were able to carry it through the entire game. And I think that was a really important precedent to set at this point in the season.
I think you said that extremely well. And there's a certain challenge that comes with defending guards, the likes of Jewel Lloyd. It's the player that is the reigning scoring champion in the W. And I think that they were up to the task again, not unlike they were in their previous matchup with the Dallas Wings with Erika and Stephen. And everything is in a dominant force from the guard position that she is as a tough shot taker, a tough shot maker on high volume, and being able to make every pass in the book as well as someone that has the ball in their hands so often. Jewel is every bit of the same type of player that Erika is. They go about their games in terms of how they play a little differently, but in terms of being primary fire starters for their respective teams, they go about it in very similar ways. And Jewel just did not have fun against the Phoenix Mercury on Sunday. And I'm pretty sure that was at the top of the scouting report and game plan from Nate Tibbetts and his brain trust. Let's take away as many pockets and opportunity and shot making and just general comfortability from Jewel Lloyd that we possibly can. I think they did an excellent job in that. At the helm of a lot of that was Kahleah Copper, but I want to also give a hat tip to Rebecca Allen as well as Natasha Cloud, because like we talked about the issues with the switching on Jackie Young in the Aces game, they were very much up to the task with their switching and very much connected within that to eliminate as many pull-up pockets as they could with Jewel in that game.
Yeah, absolutely. And they talked about it in the post game, the defensive pressure that they were applying, the help that they were giving to one another. I mean, Kahleah said it best. They were locked in. They came out with intention. I think, and we saw this same attitude in Seattle from Seattle. And I think that this was the Mercury's get back game for sure.
It was. And I think this game also, which naturally lends itself to something that's going to be a big, literally and figuratively, topic for this team is teams playing a certain way, game plan wise, matchup wise, et cetera, approach wise, for against the Mercury without Brittney Griner versus how those things flip and change when she's in the lineup. There's a certain type of accountability that you have to have with Brittney on the floor for this team that you just don't have when she's not there, and it's impossible to replicate because Brittney is the only Brittney that the W has ever seen. And so naturally you have her back in the lineup. That dictates to their front court in a different way than, they had to account for the last time they went against the Phoenix Mercury. And I think we saw Brittney's impact on things be felt in multiple contexts, taking away things at the basket, just by being a general presence, not even by literally blocking shots. The fact that she's even hovering around the basket, you can see it playing into the psyche of guards as they try to turn the corner or they potentially get a paint touch. They're second guessing whether they have the angle or not because Brittney just commands the paint in a way that's extremely unique from anyone else in the W. And that's just the defensive side. Now you talk about her on the offensive end of the floor. Her screens continue to pop. We're going to talk about just her general game a lot later. But just kind of looking at the impact that I'm speaking to, you can see it in the numbers. And granted, it's a little bit smaller of a sample size in having her in the lineup just 4 games so far. But you can see the flipping of the script in terms of the effectiveness of their play on both sides of the ball, how those two ends of the floor play together, and the winning percentage that comes with it. When you have Brittney on the floor, she really dictates to opponents in a way that's unique from any other front court piece in the W. And that adds to everything that the Phoenix Mercury are getting from their guard and wing group as a collective whole.
Absolutely. Sorry, I wanted to make sure you were done talking, and since I couldn't see your face, I was a little scared. But yeah, absolutely. This team looks completely different with BG, and we've been saying it all season long now. 8 episodes of us yapping about how different this team was going to look once Brittney came back, and we're seeing it in real time. And Brittney feels the difference. The team feels the difference. The vibe feels different. The possibilities of this team feel different with Brittney on the floor. And so those numbers, like you said, while it is a smaller sample size, I feel like they do mean so much.
Yep. And this team, I feel like the season can already be split into 2. It's the season prior to Brittney, and it's the season with Brittney, which is by the numbers that we just saw. You already see the stark contrast in what this team looks like on a league basis in terms of rankings, but also individually, just looking at the Mercury in and of itself. And I think that the big thing for me is that this is just them laying a foundation for what they're ultimately going to be. And the fact that we've seen them go blow for blow with the Las Vegas Aces without Brittney, but also do the very same thing with Brittney. And granted, they lost the game, and this team is not built for moral victories. You can still take things away. And just knowing that you're able to stack up against the best teams in the W when you're whole and when you're healthy. I think there's a lot of value in that. And again, with this team only just now starting to lay their foundation, we're having all of their main pieces in the rotation together through 4 games now. Knock on wood that continues. but this is the space that you want to be in. You want to be contending and competing with all of these teams that the schedule has laid out for you, and really be dictating to them in multiple stretches. And that's exactly what we've seen from them in each of these games since Brittney Griner's returned to the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, you asked Nate Tibbetts in the postgame about Brittney's screening impact. So Jacob, if you could just play that video for us.
BG just needs to shoot more threes. No. Yeah, I think as she evolves this year, you will see her taking 2 or 3, maybe 4 threes a game. Us throwing it inside is going to allow us also to get threes. She's a great passer, and teams are going to have a decision to make. Are they going to send a double team? And if they send a double team, she's seen everything. And so if she sees a double and thinks she can shoot over it, she'll shoot over it. And if she doesn't think she can shoot over it, she's going to spray it to the weak side. So we might not get the same threes like drive, kick, but it may be more post-up kick threes. Our pace has slowed down some, not because of just BG, I think because we had such a tough stretch. The amount of games in a short amount of time, we were battling a sickness. So our pace has slowed down, but I don't envision us shooting a lot less threes. I mean, we'll shoot a little bit less threes just because we're going to be shooting more in the paint with BG, but I don't expect it to be a big drop.
I said before, you have to make a decision. You can't go under. That's one. And then you go over, and now I got the help, and now BG is rolling. Bucket. Now, if you help on the weak side, D's rising, bucket. You make a decision. So it's a tough cover. But, you know, she's getting me free every time. So just trying to reward her and trying to play out of that.
Yeah, I think Nate and Kahleah pretty much hit it on the head in terms of Brittney's impact in the post and then Brittney's impact in screening. Those are two elements and entities of her game that I'm speaking to with that. It's not specifically her putting the ball in the basket, which she's also doing that at an extremely elite rate and efficiency as well. Speaking specifically to her post-ups, we talked about the Mercury and just their ability to knock down threes. I talked about the balance in that having Brittney and her inside presence and being able to invert play and dictate to the defense from inside out versus outside in will help them. I think one of the kind of snags in their process as they're learning their foundation is figuring out how to still keep their three-point rate high while also keeping, obviously, Brittney involved with her inside touches. Now, we've seen them tail off a little bit with Brittney back. I think they're middle of the pack. They might be 6th or 5th in three-point attempts per game right now since June 7th when she came back. But that still is kind of it's just kind of tweaking their shot profile a little bit because they're not getting the same volume of threes. However, without Brittney, I believe they were dead last or second to last in points in the paint. And now with Brittney, they're top 3. So you get the trade-off. The trade-off is you might be taking less threes, and the volume it makes in terms of the amount of points you're getting per game from deep might not be there the way that it was before she returned. But now that she's back, you're getting higher quality looks from deep, and they are also getting a extreme bump up in points in the paint. And in addition to the free throws, which is something that we'll be speaking to a little bit later as well. So just kind of looking at Brittney's impact, those two things, independent of her scoring the basketball, really stand out to me. I got a couple of other things to speak on with Miss Brittney Griner, but I'm curious, what has been your kind of perspective on what she's brought to the team in the last couple of games in particular?
I think she's been huge for spacing, and we've talked about this all year about how she is going to drive this team to greatness because it's going to free everyone else up. Kahleah spoke about this yesterday in the postgame. It is tough to be at the top of the scouting report, but when you have a scouting report as deep as the Phoenix Mercury do with Brittney Griner, and let's face it, Natasha Cloud hasn't had the best scoring year so far, but she can turn it on anytime she wants.
Let me stop you real quick on that because I've seen a lot of people having conversations about Natasha Cloud. I would say this as respectfully as I possibly can. Please pay attention to why and how this team operates. She's playing the exact way that Nate Tibbetts needs her to play for this team to be optimized, the exact way that Diana Taurasi needs her to play, Kahleah Copper needs her to play, Brittney Griner needs her to play, Rebecca Allen, Sophie Cunningham, Matt Ishbia. She's playing the exact way that this team needs her to play for all the pieces around her to be optimized. Now, yes, there are going to be moments over the course of games where she's going to be asked to score, especially in catch and shoot 3-point opportunities. But leave her alone. She's doing exactly what she needs to. She's second in the league in assists right now, and she's playing elite level point guard play. And you don't even got to talk about the value she brings on defense, which we've spoken to plenty already.
Yeah, I absolutely wasn't trying to throw dirt on my girl's name. Don't ever think that, please, because I heard what they said on the broadcast yesterday. We will not be having that talk here on this pod.
We talk about a starter scoring, but the team is up by 20 though. Like, what are we doing right now?
And like you said, that's not her job. So, anyways, moving on. Yes, the people around her, I think, are just built for success better when BG is here. I also, I hate to always bring this back to vibes, right? Okay, I'm big on vibes, but the vibes with Brittney Griner versus without Brittney Griner, I'm not going to say they're bad without BG because I don't think that's the case. But I think that they go from great to just impeccable when BG is there. And you can see it in the fact that she brought a post-game beer to the press conference yesterday. I mean, she is having a field day right now, and she's having the time of her life. And the reason I put BG's back like she never left, I should have put back in better because, quite frankly, she is playing lights out for having come off a broken toe and not been able to do any strength and conditioning on her legs for the last, 6 weeks?
Mm-hmm. We talked about trying to come back from lower leg injuries, in particular, the fact that you're immobile in multiple contexts. So to see her already playing this well, getting up and down the floor that well, being able to take on the minutes total that she's taken on the last handful of games as well, really speaks to where she's at. And again, this is just her scratching the surface of who she's going to be in 2 weeks, who she's going to be in 4 weeks, and who she's going to be after potentially taking home yet another Olympic gold medal.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move on, I know you got a little more to get to with BG, so I want to let you say that. I just want to remind everybody, please, please, please be respectful in the comments and give us a thumbs up, 5-star review, like us, all that good stuff. And this is actually why I wanted to go back to the comments, though. We got a couple super chats, and
yes.
That we give McFubin, first of all, the love that he deserves, because he says that the league has no answer for BG. And listen, McFubin, you would be correct. We talked about it on Thursday at the takeover. We've talked about it on the Discord chat. There is no answer.
Yes, you quite literally cannot be right guarding Brittney Griner. You play her one-on-one, she might get 30, and she might foul out your opposing center. If you send double teams, she can make every pass in the book. It's maybe the biggest point of growth that she showed from last season to this season was that in particular. And the patience, more than anything, really stands out to me with her in that particular way that she's processing things. She's really in control of her game, and she's really dictating to opponents. She's not catching the ball in the post to go and score right away. She understands the presence and the gravity that she has, and that is helping to better position the pieces around her to all be great in addition to her. And I was working as something that consistently compromises opponents. So you're right. There is no answer for Brittney Griner. And I mean, this is why we kept saying you have to be patient and wait until this team gets her back on the floor, because she's just that impactful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And back to our BG talk, something that I just thought about, I don't think you and I have had a lengthy discussion about turnovers since BG has been back. I think a lot of the turnovers early in the season were from dump off passes into the post that maybe just weren't prepared for that type of play, which at the position that the Mercury were at was fine, not great, but fine. And at this point, those same passes are turning into assists instead of turnovers. And I think that is the biggest improvement we've seen with this team.
I think that's one of them. And speaking to how Brittney impacts that particular dynamic of the game, you throw the ball in the post to her, the game slows down. And now, like I keep talking about them dictating with Brittney, now you're in control of what's going on action-wise. Is Brittney going to score? Is she going to be patient and wait for the double team to come because she knows it's going to come, and process where it's coming from, and then the players around her in space kind of play in reaction off of that? Or is she going to score off of the catch? Like, there's just so much going on when she has the ball in her hands. And I think she's generally it's in a different way because she's obviously not a point guard in any capacity. But in the same way that when Natasha Cloud has the ball in her hands, when Brittney has the ball in her hands, it's a calming presence that comes with it. And now there's a lot more free-flowing kind of unpredictability that comes with when she has the ball in her hands because of how she dictates to a defense and how the other offensive players on the floor for the Mercury can react to everything going on. So I think there's some great connectivity in that. When she has the ball in her hands, it's an offense in and of itself. And we're seeing them value the ball better and take better care of the ball in that as well.
Absolutely. Are we ready to move on to the league's third leading scorer, or do we have more to say on Miss BG?
Yeah, I got a couple more quick things on BG.
Go nuts, Steven. No worries.
Jacob, if we could get that I think did we already use the graphic with BG as far as if we could bring that one back up again, because I think there's a couple other things I want to speak to. Yeah. So just kind of looking at BG, look at the difference in the offensive rating. That offensive rating jump is like, that's astronomical. I know just looking at it right here, it doesn't seem like that big of a difference, but we're talking about her impact when she has the ball in her hands and how much control she has. That number in and of itself is really speaking to the difference of having her and not having her, and how much easier offense is to play when you have her on the floor. In addition to that, and you can just gauge those numbers while I'm speaking here. They're averaging the most points per game since Brittney returned. So since June 7th. In the 4 games that they've played and everybody else has played in this window of time, they're averaging 91 points per game. That's the most in the W right now. And again, that just really speaks to how much value that comes with having Brittney Griner on your team and on the floor and playing for you. And now just kind of looking at some other things, you see the difference in defense. I know that number in particular isn't that huge of a difference, but if you look at specifically when like the things that she's contributing to it, her drop coverage defense, the way that she keeps players from even attempting shots at the basket or even looking at the basket as a whole, it really just makes a big difference. And then the other big thing for me is that with the Mercury and their switching, something that they didn't have is a piece that could kind of keep their switching organized when things kind of get unorganized when you're switching at the volume at which they do defensively. When Brittney's on the floor, they now have a piece to where, let's say Rebecca Allen gets switched on the neck of Agumake. Instead of having to live with that mismatch, or Natasha Cloud getting switched on the NECA, instead of having to live with that mismatch and trying to play one-on-one in the post, Brittney's able to kind of command things from the back end. And when that switch takes place, she can go take over for that particular matchup. And then they can neutralize any type of advantage that another team might be trying to manipulate based off of the switching scheme that they're getting into. And I think those little things like that really add up over time in terms of their process, to where teams may have been able, like we talked about with the Minnesota Lynx, they really pulled and tugged at the strings of the Mercury switching scheme the last time they played them. But the most recent time they played, things just look different because Brittney was there. And that's like one specific context of the defense that her anchorship is really changing for them. And again, she's just such a presence on both sides of the floor and in terms of the intangibles of the game. And those numbers just consistently speak to just the value that she brings.
Yeah, and I think it's only going to continue to improve. The more time, I keep telling everybody that's asking me questions about the Mercury every day, listen, you got to give this team time. You got realistically, three new key pieces that are just like the key to winning for this squad. And so, yes, they're really freaking good right now, but they have the potential to be really dangerous late in this season. And that is a lot thanks to Brittney Griner.
Yep, and I think like we talked about a little bit earlier, they were 9th in points in the paint prior to BG's return to the floor, and since then they're 4th. That's such a huge jump. It just really puts teams in a bind. So I'm be looking forward to speaking of plenty more to everything that Brittney Griner is to this team. And she says she wants to be MVP. So let's not forget that she mentioned that on Media Day, in Defensive Player of the Year, in DPOY, even more specifically. So just make sure you keep an eye on that, because the impact that she's going to have to insert her name into that race is going to have to start to surface soon. And we're already seeing some semblances of that in these first 4 games.
I think the Mercury have 2 players that are in the lead for some really, or in the running for some really important WNBA awards this year. And so with all that being said, I'm really, really, really excited to talk about Kahleah Copper. And now listen, I know we talk ad nauseum at this point about Kahleah, but I think at the level of play that we are seeing from Kahleah Copper, look at me, literally scratching my head, because this shit is ridiculous, you guys. Excuse my language, but it is ridiculous. When I say that Kahleah Copper is playing lights out, I mean, she is the only player in the WNBA right now with 5 30-plus point games. In those 5 games, the Mercury is 4-1, and the game that they lost in that 5-game stretch is without Brittney Griner. So we are seeing, again, the results of having this team whole. We're seeing that come to fruition, but with Kahleah Copper in particular, her ability to drive and make plays for herself, create her own shot, it is something that the Mercury, it's invaluable to this Mercury squad. I think that we have a really great point guard in Natasha Cloud. Natasha Cloud wants nothing more than to distribute to a really damn good teammate. And we are seeing this happen in every game in tandem with Natasha and Kahleah. And I think that we are on the cusp of something extremely special with the two of them on the Phoenix Mercury.
I think that on the cusp is really showing in abundance already. Just looking at that particular tandem of assisting, being with Natasha assisting to Kahleah being the third highest in terms of volume of assists racked up between one particular player in assisting and one particular player in scoring. That's a huge boost to everything again surrounding Diana Taurasi and Brittney Griner. To have a 2-player context that's that prolific in terms of their chemistry with each other and their effectiveness and play with each other. I mean, honestly, I'm not sure that they've had 2 players play that well in tandem, independent of those two, around everything that they are since they've been together in terms of partnership as 2 teammates. And I would love to have a deeper conversation on that as we see those numbers kind of persist over time later in the regular season, or maybe potentially over the All-Star break or Olympic break, excuse me. But just kind of looking at Kahleah, she's doing everything on the basketball court. You need her to guard Jewel Lloyd. You need her to guard Erika and Stephen initially. Okay, that's fine. She'll make life tough on them, and she'll defend to the scheme and also do things external of the scheme to break their rhythm. You also need her to go and get 20 points a game. That's fine. She'll go and get 26 or 27, and she'll be the best player in the clutch in the WNBA. You wanna have her close? That's cool. That same play that you drew up for Diana Taurasi, I can go run that, and I'll knock down this 3 in front of the X Factor home crowd, and send the crowd into a frenzy, win us a game against the Minnesota Lynx, and just make things shake for our team. She just does everything. She does literally everything. You want her to run pick and roll? That's fine. She can do that like she did in the 4th quarter against the Seattle Storm and put that game away. She can score. She can facilitate out of that to Brittney Griner and make passes out of pick and roll to other players in spacing as well. She's doing everything right now, and I don't think that can be overstated. So you say we've been talking about her a lot. It's because she's given us a whole lot to talk about. And honestly, we could have spent even more time speaking about her if we really, really wanted to.
Stephen knows I could go all day. One of my favorite game notes from the weekend, though, is this was Kahleah's 3rd game this season with 30 or more points and 5 or more rebounds on 55% or better shooting. The only other player with those stat lines is A'ja Wilson. And you heard me earlier say that A'ja was the best player in the league, right? You all heard that. So when I say that Kahleah Copper is making her case for MVP, she isn't making it. She's pleading.
She is. And Jacob, if we could get that graphic up of Kahleah's clutch play this season, because I need you all to be able to see this and to internalize these numbers. Look at, first of all, before you even look at the actual numbers, just look at how many first place numbers we have up here on this specific graphic. First in free throw attempts, first in free throws made in the clutch, first in 3-pointers made in the clutch. She's also, I think, second in 3-point attempts. So to see that consistency on volume, it speaks a lot to just the space that she's operating in. She's first in field goals made in the clutch, shooting 52.2% from the field. Second in points per game in the clutch, 5.1 points. And that 68.2% true shooting percentage speaks to her efficiency from the field, as well as her efficiency from the free throw line. It's an all-encompassing stat that brings your efficiency, generally speaking, as a shooter, all into one stat. That's 68.2% on any shot that's taking place from her hands, whether it's from a dead ball and free throws or from the field, and you're getting that in the clutch. it's ridiculous. She's just a fire starter that I think maybe even past the extent that Nate Tibbetts could have expected or desired for her to be for this Phoenix Mercury team. And for her to be dictating to opponents to the extent that she is with her drives and being able to execute on time, on task whenever the team needs her to at this volume, this consistency, with this consistently early in the regular season, already having a game winner under her belt, having led comebacks from multiple double-digit deficits in fourth quarters to come back and give themselves a chance to win late in games, and then to be able, like I said, to just be so efficient and effective. Kahleah Copper's having one hell of a season right now.
I think there's a reason that the Vegas game was so hurtful, and it was because we as Mercury fans have been in this situation so many times already this season to watch the team be in a close game and for the shot not to fall. It stings now as Mercury fans. We think we're never out of it. It could have 3 seconds left and we could be down by 9. And Mercury fans are like, listen, we got Kahleah Copper, y'all. It's all good. And that's really, she's a closer. She is the very definition of a closer for this Mercury team. And like Stephen said, I think he said it really well. Nate Tibbetts could have never anticipated this level of play from Ka this year. Never.
For a long time, Mercury fans, just kind of put this in perspective. When was the last time that Diana Taurasi, arguably the clutchest player in WNBA history, was able to not just figuratively, but literally take a backseat in crunch time and be used as a chess piece that's not the direct one with the ball in her hands? Like, just process that. Because Kahleah has put Diana in a position to where Diana can play off of catch and shoot opportunities to the extent that she hasn't enjoyed in crunch time play probably her entire career, quite honestly. And I think there's so much value in being able to be multifaceted in your attack. Again, we're talking about this being at the foundation of everything the Mercury are building. You get late in the season, and now you can start to see where you can see a runway where Nate can decide, okay, let's go through BG because of this particular matchup that we have in the fourth quarter or in crunch time play. Or again, speaking from the perspective of Nate, okay, let's go to Diana on this handful of plays. Or like we've seen at multiple stretches, which I've done film on as well as spoken on the podcast, we can see Nate drawing up plays for Kahleah Copper ad nauseum. Or like we talked about following the game against the Minnesota Lynx, Diana Taurasi literally saying like, no, that play is for Kahleah. That's not for me. Let her go ahead and kill this thing. She got it. Those things really add up. And I think this team is going to really be a juggernaut in terms of out executing teams with the multifaceted dynamics that they have that they can tap into in crunch time play. And I think that's something I'm certainly going to speak to when we're looking at that matchup with the New York Liberty. But I think that's a space that the Liberty are in now that the Mercury can get to, potentially even by the All-Star break with the volume of games that we're seeing them be in crunch time play with.
Yeah, kind of looking ahead to this game against the Liberty actually tomorrow in Phoenix. I think this is going to be a really interesting matchup for a lot of reasons. First of all, I think we're seeing playoff Jonquel Jones in the regular season, which I think is always extremely fun. She is playing at a very high level, and I think when you have a post player at the level that JJ plays at, it is hard to beat you. The New York Liberty was the first team to knock off the Connecticut Sun. I think that speaks very highly to, their coaching, their ability, their willingness to come out and make big plays, to make big stops. Connecticut is a team, we've spoken about them ad nauseum at this point, that's been together forever. When we speak so highly about Natasha Cloud's assist ratio with Kahleah, there's only one other player that you can even really compare Natasha Cloud's assists to, and it's Alyssa Thomas with the Connecticut Sun. So all that being said, New York Liberty had to do some serious digging and work to pull off that win over the Sun. That being said, they are second in the league. I think this is going to be like I said, a really, really interesting matchup. And I think that there's going to be a lot decided in the first 5 minutes. I think we can either see a battle between posts or we can see a battle between guards. And I think that the decision will be made very early in this game, which battle we're going to get to see. And I think either way, we're in for an extremely exciting game.
Yes, we are in for an extremely high level game. There's a lot of box office names between both teams. We talked about obviously Kahleah, Natasha, Diana, Brittney, And then you could talk about Sabrina. You could talk about Slutie if she plays in this game, I think, which is pending at the moment. Obviously, Breanna Stewart, and obviously Jonquel Jones. That's just a lot of names, a handful of Olympic level names that are going to be on the court for this matchup as Sandy Brondello makes her return to the Footprint Center. I think it's going to be a high level matchup in terms of the play on the court, but also from both coaches as well, in terms of adjusting on time, being able to make the right moves in terms of keeping their team in a position to dictate to the other. I'm really curious within all of the matchups how things are going to go with the Phoenix Mercury and dealing with the switching from the New York Liberty. So they're arguably the most switch-heavy team. There's something that's really baked into their process in terms of how they operate defensively. They have so many defensive stalwarts on their team that they can really be comfortable with allowing to play one-on-one on the perimeter. And I think that naturally lends itself to seeing some chess that's going to be played between both teams. I think the perfect way for the Mercury to go up against that switching is going to be to throw the ball in the post to Brittney Griner. And I think that's going to be where they're going to be able to consistently dictate to their defense. So that's going to be maybe the biggest thing I'm going to be looking for. Like you talked about, things going to be kind of determined in the post. But I think the other thing within that is going to be, which I talked about a little bit earlier, finding that balance between the post touches for BG and being able to generate the volume of three-point shots that you're going to need to, because this New York Liberty team scores at a high clip and they play at a high pace. So if you can balance out the pace of the game by getting the ball inside to Brittney and being able to dictate to their switching from inside out, that's going to be a way for them to just consistently, like I said, put their stamp on things and really kind of throw the first punch in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, before we go, I want to make sure I reiterate that there's no player on the New York Liberty that is not a three-point threat, not a single one. Okay. So we might have a really good three-point shooting squad with the Phoenix Mercury, but watching JJ take threes in the Footprint Center might bring me physical pain. So I really, I'm here for an exciting game. It's going to be really, really fun with the Liberty and the Merc.
I think they're matching up at a great time. I think both teams are kind of hitting their season peak so far. Naturally, I think they'll be much better come playoff time, but at this juncture in the regular season, I don't think these two teams can match up at a better time. The Mercury coming off of a blowout, or what was a blowout initially, and then it got a little interesting at the end, but a win over the Seattle Storm. And then the Liberty coming off of a win on the road against the Aces in their building. I think that the space that these two teams are operating in is going to really be a good barometer for just where this team is, the Mercury, in their process, what that kind of projects to in terms of looking at the other heavyweights across the league, and where there's potentially room for improvement as well. I'm really amped up and looking forward to this game. And if I could just give one watching tip, just kind of watch for the lineups that are used between both teams and how they kind of counter back and forth with one another. Sabrina Ionescu is having a crazy, great season, and she's really opening up her offensive bag in terms of not just being a shooter, but being able to put the ball on the deck. So I'm curious to look at the matchups as far as who's going to be guarding her to start games, who's going to be guarding her in the clutch, what the switching is looking like in terms of those issues we saw with Jackie, and if they're able to kind of take those issues away and kind of make it look a little bit more like it did against Jewel Lloyd, against the Seattle Storm, and just generally what pace the game is going to be played at. Is it going to be extremely up and down the floor, which is going to be a little bit more in favor of the New York Liberty, or is it going to be a little bit more slowed down and slightly more half-court oriented, which would be, in my opinion, to the favor of the Phoenix Mercury?
Yeah, absolutely. All that being said, Stephen did say one thing wrong there, and that there's no better time for the Mercury to match up with the Liberty. And I can only think of one better time, actually, and it's August 26th when we have our next takeover event. And listen, I'm pretty excited about this one. And I just have to say, one of the first teams I really watched heavily was Sab's Oregon team. It was freaking exciting. Watching them beat Team USA. It was the real you had to be there experience. Like, if you weren't, you really missed out. And I can never thank that period of basketball enough for getting me in. And so now here we are a few years later, and we're going to go see the Liberty on August 22nd. We are going to be having some pregame food and drink at the Desmond the same way we did last week. The link was a little screwed up earlier, and it was showing us sold out. So McFubin was going to be the only one that was able to attend because he's the only one that plans in advance. But luckily, we've gotten the link fixed, and we are good to go. So all that being said, Stephen, I think we've done great work today. Where the heck can they find you?
Before we get to that, also want to make sure you shout out Tyler for the super chat as well. We
Oh,
appreciate you, Tyler.
Yes, Mr. McDowell. Listen, he was my high school teacher. Fun fact. So we really stand
Okay.
Tyler. We really stand Tyler.
Yes, we appreciate you, Tyler. Thank you so much.
He was a little wrong in the comment, but I will say that the Mercury is always undefeated in vibes. So you're not wrong.
They're taking the baton and handing it off to us based off of their play. We got to match that energy.
I'm trying, okay?
No doubt.
You met me. You heard the speed in which I talk in real life, Stephen. Quickly.
Yeah. No, for sure. We trying to match the energy that the team is bringing and the way that X Factor engages with them as well. So, again, we appreciate you, Tyler. Also, shout out McFubin again. We appreciate the super chats. Thank y'all for tapping in with us so much.
Yeah, it's been a really fun weekend. We could never thank you guys enough for all the support on the Twitter, on this channel, all of it. Just thank you guys, thank you guys, thank yous. And if you're not in the Die Hard chat, you really are missing out. I sent Steven some memes over the weekend. Hilarious. In fact, on Wednesday, I'm gonna have to ask the Discord's approval. But I'm gonna ask if I can just show one of the memes because it is actually the most hilarious thing I've ever seen in my life. So with all that though, Stephen, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at StayTrueS.3. And you can also find me on YouTube at Stephen Prejean Gardner 3. I'll be having written content coming up on the PHNX site as well prior to tomorrow's game. So be on the lookout for that. That'll include some film, kind of looking at some things as far as what's been going on with the team as well. So also be looking forward to the game threads on Twitter during the game as well. It's kind of talking about things in real time, what's going on, what I'm seeing. And let's continue to clean up the discourse in this space of ours. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's seen the way things have been talked about and how the women's basketball game from a particular lens is being spoken on. I know that's not what any of the people in our community that we're establishing are about. So let's just make sure we continue to do our part in building up this community of ours, doing things the right way. And please watch out for your mental health if you are engaging in those conversations. Make sure you take a break from things. Remember that that's social media. That's not real life. And just continue to prioritize yourself and all of that as well. Don't consume too much of it.
I just want to say my favorite thing about both Stephen and I is we both speak exactly how we text and we text exactly how we speak. And I never have questions about what he means because I can hear him say it. Like right now, you just said something out loud in italics. And like, I don't think I can name any other person that speaks aloud in italics. You know what I mean? Anyways, you guys, I've been Erika Lee Day. You can follow me on Twitter at Erika Lee Day or on the Mercury account at PHNX_Mercury. I'll be there tomorrow. Boots on the ground for the New York Liberty, taking on the Mercury back at the Footprint Center tomorrow at 7 o'clock. If you won't be there, be square. All that being said, though, see you guys on Wednesday.
We all silly like the mayor.